Thank you, everybody, for attending this panel. The panel is titled Stronger Together, Closing the Cyber Divide. Let me do a bit of a framing of the discussion before we go into the actual discussion itself. When we think about cyber attacks, we often associate it with big targets and big ransoms. But research has shown that cyber attacks disproportionately disable marginalized communities and small businesses, critical services providers, and nonprofits, as well as the communities that these nonprofits support. Cyber attacks, they don't just leave a trail of broken systems and stolen databases. Real people are harmed and livelihoods are harmed. There is a long tail cost, too, of the loss of trust by the citizens' trust and consumers' trust. How are banks, corporations, and philanthropies pooling resources to close the cyber divide, and how does AI make things better or worse? We hope to tackle some of these challenges today, and would like to open the discussion by first turning to Stéphane to talk about the organization that you come from, and what are some of the missions that and the focus area of the organization. What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
No, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here and to be in this event. To go back to your question, so I'm leading the CyberPeace Institute. We're based in Geneva, and what we do in a nutshell is we protect other civil society, other non-profit. We are non-profit. So why? Because these non-profit, which are across sector, are the last defenders, the one in the front line. They are the one helping refugees, they are the ones supporting children in need, they are the one ensuring the sanity of water, shelters, food, humanitarian, and these non-profits, as crazy as it seems, they are today under heavy attack in the cyberspace. And they do not really represent an interesting market for the cybersecurity traditional community. So when the CyberPeace Institute was created, we decided if we want to have an impact, to vulnerable communities, this is where we need to have an impact, because if you safeguard these entities, you safeguard millions of people that they are servicing. So we are providing for free cybersecurity to no more than 600 non-profit globally. And to do that, the only way practically that you can scale and sustain the service is via partnership with philanthropies and the private sector. So, for example, we have partnership ongoing with Google.org in the EU, in the APAC, in the US, in order to provide these services. But we have also partnership with more than 200 organizations, Mastercard being one of which, where we gather cyber volunteers, workforce, people who join the cybersecurity business because they have the heart in the right place, they want to secure, they want to protect, and we give them the opportunity not only to secure Mastercard, for example, but also to help save the children, Doctors Without Borders, or this kind of organization. So that's how we get the best of the community, private sector, or philanthropies, and to scale the services to the one that we all need, the non-profits.
Right, wonderful. You have a bunch, soldiers on the ground doing real work. So to give us an idea of what are some of the harms that real people face, could you maybe talk about some recent events that illustrate how cyber attacks are not just against systems, but against real people and livelihoods, and how they're affected by maybe some recent occurrences?
You know, indeed, we just published a report, in fact, this week about the state of play of cyber attacks against micro-enterprises in the APAC region, the ones that are really involved in financial inclusion. And when these organizations are impacted, this is hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the community which are facing issues when it comes to access to financing. And we heard since this morning how this is the lifeblood of the region. Other example on the non-profit sector is a non-profit that I have in mind, which was in the very difficult activity of removing landmines in the fields just during or after conflicts, which got impacted by cyber attacks, lost 1.2 million, and because of that, the activities in the field close to ceased, disappeared. When this disappears, it's hundreds of people that are in the field doing the right job in order to save people from being, blown up when walking onto a bomb, and it's also an impossibility to bring back these services at scale. Because today there's a lot of budget disappearing from the non-profit sector, and it impacts operation forever. rebuilding what was there before is going to be complicated. So on top of that, having cyber attack is extremely devastating.
Right. You spoke about partnership with Google.org. Could you, maybe Maggie, can talk about the alliance with CyberPeace Institute on some of these projects?
Yeah, we have worked very closely with many nonprofits that are working in the cybersecurity space. I think in general, philanthropies often are providing resources to, these kinds of organizations, as well as really focused on marginalized communities that are most at risk with some of the cybersecurity risks. I think that the way that we operate is very similar to what Stéphane said, which is we work with nonprofits who are on the ground, and they are the ones that are really close to these communities, know the best ways to work with them. So we might provide the resources, the education, the product donations, but it's really those nonprofits are the ones that are really able to work effectively there. One of the things that we as Google bring is quite often scale. So think about that in terms of maybe it's a platform that can take local educational content and make it more broadly available. It could be a product donation that allows a nonprofit to actually scale their services, or it could be just data infrastructure that provides open access to data and tools. So we try and apply the technology in ways that not only support the communities on the ground, but the nonprofits that serve them best. So.
Right, and Google just funded a $5 million partnership with the Asia Foundation to create university-based cyber clinics. Do you want to talk about that and also answer the question about how do you ensure that these clinics become lasting pillars of change in the communities that they serve, and it's just not just a one-off aid project?
Sure. The university clinic model it works really well. I don't know if you know about, like with law schools, you'll have a legal clinic associated with a law school, and basically what's happening are the law students, as they're learning law, are actually providing free services to the clinic, to the local community. And it's the same thing with the cybersecurity clinic. These are students that are providing free services to local businesses, local nonprofits, and startups, and it's just a really effective model. We have, as you mentioned, we work with the ASEAN Foundation. About 3 years ago, we funded them to start these clinics in both Singapore, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And then just this year, we have increased that to provide these clinics in 11 more countries. Now, this year, we started working with the Global Cyber Alliance and the consortium of cybersecurity clinics. Those organizations are really helping us scale, and it gets to the question you asked about sustainability. And these are really naturally sustainable, because what happens, a lot of the money goes into actually starting the clinics up, and then as long as you have students, you can kind of keep it going. And then the partnership with the consortium of cybersecurity clinics, that's a global consortium. They have dozens of clinics that they've opened all over the world. And what we do with them is not only share knowledge and best practices, but also they give us scale. And then finally, one of the things that's really important about these clinics is that there's a fairly significant shortage of cybersecurity professionals. And this is really a way of training the next generation. So lots of ways it really turns out to be quite sustainable.
Great. Giving students real-world experience is also a great idea. And what more, it provides a pipeline of talent to ensure that the initiative stays with the local community. Mm-hmm. Right. We will turn to Eng Hui. You come from the commercial, from the finance world, where the sharing of data is not so forthcoming, because it's more like a competitive advantage that one bank has over another. How do you then ensure that there is collective cyber resilience? Can banks in ASEAN strengthen collective cyber resilience, but still compete at the same time?
Thank you, Irene, for the question. Maybe just a bit of background. Baiduri Bank is a bank in Brunei. We are part of the Brunei Association of Banks. Baiduri Bank holds the chairmanship of the Banking Association in Brunei over the last couple of years, and we've been involved in the ASEAN Banking Association since. So there are 10 national banking associations under the ASEAN Banking umbrella. So while we are not able to share data for the time being, there's a lot of collaboration at the industry level to build capacity and also sharing of best practices. For example, under the ASEAN Banking Permanent Committee, we have a committee looking at digital risk, where there's a lot of work being done to understand the risks involved in the digital space, and sharing of that training, learning across all members to build capacity. So that's done at the industry level regularly. Now, what is important is because we know that cyber risk transcends border, and therefore at the country level, in the spirit of ASEAN, we are also seeing that kind of collaboration. Just this morning, I understand during the breakfast roundtable that Malaysia actually helped Brunei to set up the Cyber Emergency Response Center in the spirit of ASEAN unity. So, the smaller economies are the weakest link, and I think to protect the whole ASEAN family, the bigger economies tends to help out. And that's an example how collaboration at the country level, at the industry level, are working together to build cyber resilience.
How do you share threat intel? Is there a huge Slack, with multiple channels for instant information sharing?
So instant information sharing is something is work in progress at the banking industry level. It's taken a long time to do that. So what we've done is starting to develop a data, what we call data interoperability framework to allow cross-border sharing of financial data for secured transaction processing. For a number of key projects that the ASEAN Banking Association is running. I will share more detail on those projects later. But data sharing is a big challenge across, even within the country, and even more challenging across the countries. Yeah.
Right. You've rightly pointed out that cyberattacks transcends borders, and attackers are getting coordinated and helped by AI. So AI has changed the landscape, the threat landscape, significantly. Stéphane, maybe going back to you, how is AI making enforcements against malicious actors more challenging and difficult? And what are some of the opportunities you see that organizations can explore?
Yeah, I guess you have to see AI as an enabler of different communities. So your question is on threat actors. Obviously, it enables threat actors to be faster, to do like any other business, to cut costs, to be more efficient. For example, there's campaigns now that are based solely on phishing and on manipulation of your targets, which were impossible in certain languages, which become possible because thanks to LLM, you can craft any content in any language. We also saw very recently some AI-based deepfake attacks, fake sound, fake video. You think you talk to someone and you're not, and that someone tried to create a feeling of urgency in you so that you're going to make a wire transfer from point A to point B. We see this more and more. But at the same time, AI is also enabling defense. We should not forget that. And we went through several accelerator programs on AI in the CyberPeace Institute, not only us to be better in having better data to understand the threat landscape using AI, but also to train the community of nonprofit around us in order how to use AI into their daily operations. So it's a double-edged sword.
Right. On the topic of technology and AI, they tend to intersect with philanthropy in unexpected ways, in more often than not. How do you see the two working together to close the digital divide in Southeast Asia? Perhaps, Maggie, you can take this question.
And that's specifically about the digital divide.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I talked a moment ago about how philanthropy and technology tend to work together, where you have the philanthropy providing the resources and the technology potentially providing the scale. With the digital divide, it's challenging. I mean, you think about helping nonprofits actually be able to scale and be able to provide the resources on the ground to local communities. To actually affect the digital divide, you really need to reach a lot of communities. I mean, it's a very vast number of marginalized communities that are, at risk in the, this concept of the digital divide, and it actually getting worse. So I think one of the things that is really important to think about is how can we first of all, deal with the connectivity issue, which I think is very important and very present in many of these communities. We heard this morning that there's actually some progress in ASEAN countries around, along these lines. And I know, just speaking for Google, we've built subsea cables that connect Southeast Asia with Japan, with the South Pacific and Australia, and connecting all that to North and South America. So, and a lot of other companies are doing that. So ideally, the connectivity problem starts to improve over time, which is a really major issue in terms of helping with the digital divide. The other thing I think is that you really need to find ways for major foundations, major sources of resources to work together. It not only eliminates duplication of effort, it also really, pooling the resources actually makes them go farther. It helps to apply them in ways that are way more effective. And I think that that's really a key, is to find ways to bring these organizations together so that they're able to actually collaborate and help solve that problem more effectively.
Bringing organizations together and solving common problems is something that Eng Hui spoke about earlier, how banks in ASEAN are coming together to tackle a common problem. Do you want to talk about how ASEAN banks are tackling the issue of digital divide?
Okay, so on this topic, first of all, maybe I can share the ASEAN banks are looking at the, if you look at what's frightening a lot of the digital users, especially in ASEAN, the scams are actually very worrying. And it's something that actually was discussed heavily during the last ASEAN banking meeting in Kuala Lumpur in December last year. And it was decided during that meeting that the banking associations should come together following a presentation from the Singapore Association of Banks. When we look at the whole digital ecosystem, there has to be some risk sharing. It cannot be just the victims. So all the ecosystem players need to come in and share some responsibilities. From the telcos, from the internet service providers, to the equipment manufacturers, to the media company, to banks, regulators, police enforcement. So all these need to come together. So what was decided was that given that this is a huge digital ecosystem, the bank would work together first, together with the regulators and the law enforcement, to come together and then share best practices. So that happened last year, and I'm glad to share that, since then there have been a number of workshops being held to share best practices. So hopefully that will help, banks in ASEAN combating this particular aspect on, digital scams and all that. I think the second aspect is that the regulators in the region has rolled out policies on security by design for systems. That means looking at systems from the security point of view to make sure that they are safe. And also to promote governance within the IT operations. Banks are encouraged to follow ISO standards 27001. So I think in terms of policies and governance, that's another approach that banks are doing in the banking industry to tighten, to build a stronger financial system. And to develop trust, as you probably have seen also, a number of countries has rolled out national digital IDs for individuals and very soon also for businesses. So authentication is important. So I think the national digital ID projects being rolled out one by one across ASEAN countries are really very important initiative to develop trust. Yeah.
What is the one thing, and this is to all the panel members, what is the one thing you would what the one message that you were to give to policymakers as you rally for change, that one bold move and the one thing that you would like more from policymakers to bring about lasting change. Stéphane, you just did a research recently on resilience, financial inclusion. What were some of the recommendations in there? What were some of the calls that you're making to policymakers for lasting change on cyber resilience?
Thank you. And this report is the follow-up of the first report that we did with the Asia Foundation of the whole threat landscape when it comes to APAC and very micro businesses and small enterprises. And we did similar research in Europe, and at the end of the day, it's not so different, sadly enough, when it comes to policymakers' recommendation. Policy making should enable this kind of entity to be resilient. It should not put the resilience objective so far away that you can never achieve it, and while you're not achieving, you're going to be hit on the head, because that doesn't go anywhere. But to empower this sector to really build its resilience at a pace that is possible, and not over-regulate and pack up regulation, which is at the end just creating friction, but absolutely no result. So it's about, it's nice to have a regulation, but if there's no operational mean to put this into action for the reality of someone, there's no point to regulate.
Right. Do you have an example to illustrate your point?
I mean, not from that report, but more from the pile-up of regulation that you see in the EU, for example. It's like even these regulations don't go end-to-end one with each other. And the fact with EU, and that's an impact here in this region, is that they are extraterritorial. So as soon as a regulation taken from the other part of the planet, there's going to be an impact here on how you think your cybersecurity. So it's, I'm for that, I'm for regulation. Obviously, we need this, but it has to be linked closely to action and to result for the one that is supposed to implement the regulation. And we missed that today.
Okay, Maggie.
I would say education is key, whether it's cybersecurity or we're thinking about the proliferation of AI and AI skills and how important that is. There's so many organizations, foundations, companies, everyone is working on this, and everyone is trying to get the right education out in as many ways as possible, but you really can't do it without the policymakers and government to actually scale and bring it to communities in a way that is relevant to them. So I think that that's probably my main message.
Right. How about Eng Hui?
So the ASEAN government has rolled out the ASEAN Digital Economy Master Plan 2025 recently. And as part of that, the idea would be to promote inclusivity and develop the economy. And at the banking industry level, something along the same thinking has been working on to really create more linkages between ASEAN economies and how banks can support this initiative. I will give 2 examples, one of which is, in ASEAN, sometimes we can think big, one example would be the ASEAN Power Grid project, which is very ambitious, probably take 20, 30 years to do. So we do, able to think big. At the ASEAN banking level, we also have 2 big projects where we are thinking very big. One of which is the ASEAN digital trade connectivity, where we're trying to link up the trade processing between countries. And it's a difficult project because it involves multiple government agencies, it involves banks in the country, it involves regulators, involves transport companies, shipping companies. So really, it's a very big project. And I'm happy to share that this project probably not so visible to the public yet, because it has been developed on trial for now almost 5 years in Thailand. We also understand Malaysia is advancing quite well. Singapore is also advancing quite well. So that's a project which, to be rolled out quite soon between the countries who are ready. The idea is to, connect all ASEAN countries by 2030 and put all these countries on the digital trade connectivity platform so that we can do more trade, so that we can get the MSMEs to be able to trade easily. And to support that, there is also a regional payment connectivity project to promote ASEAN regional payments. And as you probably know, a number of countries are already doing bilateral payments. Singapore, Malaysia, between each other. Singapore, Thailand, between each other. So these are all bilateral payments. And the idea was to connect the major ASEAN economies, the top 5, together, hopefully by 2026 or 2027. So these 2 big projects will promote inclusivity and help the businesses and allow trade to flourish even more between ASEAN countries. So these are important projects in my mind.
Okay, great. I think we have no time, and I would just like to thank our panelists on stage here for their valuable insights into the topic, and thank you, everybody.